Hello and welcome back to this development of an HTML5 canvas drawing application. So last time we added this color palette which made the images a whole lot more interesting by adding some color. Today we're going to look at how we can go about saving these images. So you can see here we have a pretty much photorealistic drawing of one of the Na'vi from Avatar. And so let's see what happens when we click the save button. As you can see, our beautiful image comes up, gets downloaded. Let's see how we can go about doing that. So far we've only used one method of the canvas element itself, and that was the getContext method, and everything else has been done within that context. But there is one other method of the canvas element itself, and that is toDataURL. This picks up all of the image data inside the canvas and spits it out in the form of a data URL, otherwise known as a data URI. This can be used just like a normal URL, but you can see it's not actually pointing to an external resource. It's actually the resource itself is encoded into the URL. So here you can see it starts data, then the content type. So here by default it's a PNG image. Then it says base64, and this is a base64 encoded string. Now what does that mean? Well, there's 64 possible characters for every little bit you see here. So this uses the lowercase alphabet, the uppercase alphabet, the numbers 0 to 9, a plus symbol, and a /. If you want to see how these strings are determined and what these equal signs mean, just do a quick Google search for base64 encoding, and there is a great Wikipedia article on this topic. So this toDataURL method is how we're going to go about saving our pictures. So let's jump into our code. We're going to do the same thing we've been doing for our other controls. So we're going to say we're going to add another div to our toolbar, and I'm going to just call this save. Inside here, I'm just going to say the word save, and I'm going to style this a little bit. I'm going to give it a height of 30 pixels, a little bit of padding, a background colour. Oh my goodness, background colour 4, that'll do, and that should do it. And then I'm also going to style the hover state, so that's also going to be background colour. I'm going to use Coda's lovely little colour picker interface here, and hopefully now if we close this, refresh here, that's not at all what I wanted. What have I done? And I want to float this element left. So, sorry, right. I want that. And in fact, I'll add a bit of padding as well. So now I have a save button going on, and I know I rushed through that a little bit, but we've added enough controls that I think you should understand how that all works now. Now we're going to do, again, a very similar thing to what we've been doing. We're going to add this script tag with save.js, and then we're going to create that file. It's going to say new file, save.js, open that up, and this is fairly common practice to you guys now, but we're going to say save button equals document.getElement by ID, using the ID of save, and then we're going to add an event listener to that button. Remember my capital L. As per usual, we're using the clock event, no, the click event, and we're going to create a function called saveImage. So we're going to say saveImage. This is going to take no parameters, but we're going to use that toDataURL method that we talked about before. So we're going to say var data equals canvas.toDataURL. remember your capital URL, open and close parentheses, finish the line. So now we've got our data URL inside this variable data, and there are a lot of things we can do with this. The first one is we can just open it up in a new window. We do that by saying window.open. This is a function that obviously just opens a new window. The first parameter it takes is the URL, and the next is the name of the window, and then there's some other options that you can add. So the URL, we're just going to say data. So as I say, we can use these data URIs interchangeably with URLs for the most part. The name, now if you've done sort of anchor tags and used that target blank, this is essentially what's going on here. W3 Schools has a great reference for this method, so you can see what each value of the name parameter will do. It also gives you a really good rundown on the specs that you can add. So for us, quite a few of these will be useful because we want this just to be as simple as possible. All we're doing in this window is displaying an image. So we can do this, we can say don't display the address field, don't display the menu bar. You know, that will probably do for now. So let's say location equals 0 to get rid of the address bar, menu bar equals 0 to get rid of the menu bar. Let's see how that looks. So let's go back to our application, draw something on the canvas, click save, and you can see our image pops up with no sort of Chrome to the browser really, it's just a window. So that's one really simple thing we can do with our data that we pick up from this canvas.toDataURL method. And from here, I mean, the users can save image to downloads or whatever, but it's sort of difficult. It's not very user friendly because they have to right click and it's got this massive window. You can use the specs parameter to change the width and height if you want to, but then you get a little picture. It's clearly not the best solution, but it's certainly something you can do. And it's also a great demonstration of the fact that this can be used interchangeably with URLs, and because of that fact you could use it in like an anchor tag, or even you can even use it as the source of an image tag. We're going to comment that out for now, because the next thing we're going to do is quite a lot more complicated. We're going to save this image to our server. Now to do this we're going to be using Ajax and PHP. So up until now in this project you may have been able to get away with just opening the files in your browser without a web server. Because we're about to use PHP, you are going to need a web server running on your machine. So we're going to set up an Ajax request. And if you haven't done this before, the way we do this is we create a new XML HTTP request object. So we do that just by saying the reference that we want to use, and then we say equals new XML HTTP request. And we also want to open and close our parentheses there. So this gives us a new object, an XML HTTP request object, still quite hard to say, and there are some things we want to do with this. So we're going to say request.open. This is how we tell our XHR where to send requests and how to do it. So the first parameter is how to do it. So if you've ever used forms with PHP, hopefully you'll recognise the post and get methods. Here we're going to use post because get in some circumstances has size limits, and we're going to be sending quite a lot of data because obviously we're sending an image. So we're going to say post, and then the next one is where to send it. So we're going to create a file called save.php, and that's where we're going to send this. The final one is whether or not this request should be asynchronous. We're going to say true. If a request is synchronous, it means it will pause any scripts running on the current page until it gets the response. If it's asynchronous, it means it will go away and do its thing independently of the current thing that you're doing. So you can continue working on the page without having to worry about what your request's doing. Typically you will always want this to be true. when you're using an XHR. So the next thing we're going to do is set our request header. So we're going to say request.setRequestHeader, and this method takes the header name and the content. So the header name we're going to be using is content type, and the content type we want to use is really awkward. It's called you say application / x -www -form -URL encoded. And that's quite a mouthful. But what that basically means is that, again, if you're used to working with forms in PHP and you've used the get method, you'll be familiar with this sort of form. So you'll have www.something.com and then / PHP file, and then there will be a bunch of key value pairs. So this could be like name equals John, for example. And so basically what this is saying is that our data is going to be encoded like this. It's just going to be the name of the variable that we want to use, and then an equals sign, and then the data that's going to be in that variable. So this is exactly how we're going to send our data. We're going to say request.send, and we're going to call this variable image, and we're going to add the equals sign, and then we're going to concatenate our data, which we've got from our toData URL. So if we use that, what that's basically doing is sending the request for us. Now we need to tell it what to do with the response. So to handle responses, we use the onReadyStateChange event. So we say request.onReadyStateChange equals function, and the ready state is basically the sort of the status of the request. So has it started yet? Has it not started? Is it partially loaded, or is it fully loaded? And fully loaded is the final ready state and the state that we want to find. So on ready state change, if the ready state is 4, which is the final ready state, the fully loaded ready state, and request, and the request.status equals 200, so that's an HTTP status. So you will have seen when you're browsing the web things like error 404 or 500. They're HTTP statuses. So 404 is a page not found, and a 500 is an internal server error. 200 is one that you won't normally see because it basically means okay, everything's good to go. And so what we're doing here is checking if it's fully loaded and checking if what we got back is all okay. And if that's true, we can do our stuff. So in here we can use the response, and we get that just by saying response text. And we're going to store that in a variable. So we're going to say var response equals request.response text, so we can use that. So what can we do with this? Well, well, for now let's just console log it. Console log response. Okay, so now the XHR is set up, but obviously at the moment we're not going to get any response because save.php doesn't exist. So let's remedy that. Let's go new file, save.php, and open this up. So as I say, it's going to be just like having a form submitted. So if you've ever done that, you should recognize this. So we're going to open up our PHP tags. We're going to say our data equals the post array. So $_post is an associative array of all the variables that this page got sent via the HTTP post method. And we're going to look for image. So that's going to find what we've sent it here. and that's going to be equal to our data. Now remember that's encoded in base 64, and PHP gives us a really handy feature called base 64 decode. So we can just say base 64 decode data. Unfortunately that's not the end of the story, because base 64 decode doesn't expect any of this stuff that we see on the front here. So we want to get rid of that. So we can just use this like a string, so we can say data equals str replace. We're going to look for that first bit that we want to chop off, so we say data colon image slash ping semicolon base 64 comma. Now we're going to replace that with nothing, and we're doing that inside the data string. So that gets rid of that sort of prefix to our actual the actual meat of our data. The other thing is, remember we have the plus and the slash. Now pluses, when you use that, when you include that into a URL, it's interpreted as a space, and we really don't want that. So at the moment PHP is going to see all these spaces in this string and just have no idea what to do with it. So what we want to do is do a similar thing to what we've just done, str replace, and we want to get our spaces back, our pluses back, sorry. So we want to get rid of the spaces and replace them with pluses, and again we're doing that inside the data string. So now we can use this base 64 decode on data, and now we have this file. This is our image file. So let's create a file path, somewhere to put this. I'm using this folder images, so you want to create a folder on your server called whatever you want it to be called. And then I'm going to append to that, I'm going to use this function of PHP unique ID. Now this is really handy because it basically gives you a unique number based on the time in microseconds. So it's really handy if you're going to have if you're building some sort of system where you know you're going to have a lot of stuff uploaded to one place and you just need unique names for all of it. This is a really good starting point for those unique names. So we're going to say images slash this unique number, and then we're going to append .png on the end of it. So remember, because we've stripped all this from our data, at the moment PHP has no idea that it's a PNG. To PHP it's just a whole lot of data. So what we want to do is give it a PNG file extension so that it will be opened as a PNG. And now we can say file put contents, we want to put it at our path, we want to put our image, so that's going to put our image file at this path that we've just defined. But let's not end the line there, because what we want to do is say if this works, if this succeeds, then we want to output something, and I'm going to output the path because I feel like this is going to be useful for our JavaScript to have. But else we want the JavaScript to know that it's failed. Like we don't want this to seem like it's succeeded if it's failed. So if you're setting up something in PHP to respond to an Ajax request and something's gone wrong, what do? Well, we're going to use this header function, and we're going to set this to that 500 that HTTP status 500, that internal server error I was talking about. So here we're looking for the status of OK, but now it's not OK at all. So we're going to say HTTP using version 1.1, and we want to just say 500 internal server error. Remember, if you're using the header function, you can't have outputted anything beforehand. So if you are handling errors like this, make sure that it's done before you've outputted anything else. Okay, so perfect. So now our PHP should respond to our Ajax request by uploading the image and then spitting out the file path, and if that fails it's going to give a 500 internal server error. So now, I tell you what, instead of console logging, let's use window open, that method that we looked at earlier, and we're just going to use our response as the URL, and let's have a look at if that works. So hopefully, if we draw a masterpiece here and save that, we get this image, and this is no longer coming straight from the data URI. This is coming from the server. And to prove that to you, if I go into my file system here, open up my images. Well, that's embarrassing. There you go. Right. So yeah, that's being uploaded to our server, and then we're spitting it back out with the window.open method. But we do still have this problem, because at the moment when the user clicks save, they get this image back, and it is saved to the server, but if they want to download it, they still have to right click and do their save image as whatever. How can we get around that? How can we make the browser download it automatically? I'm sure you've all seen cases where the browser downloads files automatically. A lot of time if you open, try and open like a movie file or an audio file that's not supported by the browser, it will download automatically, simply because it can't open it up itself. But you may also have seen situations where the browser does get forced to download files that it could easily open itself. So how can we do that? Well, let's create a new file. We're going to create a file called download.php. We're going to open this up, and this is going to be basically a wrapper that we send files to force the browser to download a file. So we're just going to use the get method this time. We're not going to use post. So it's going to be get $_ get, and again this is just going to be an associative array of all the variables that got passed to this page using the get method. I'm going to say file. Obviously we haven't made this request yet, so I'll talk you through that in a moment. So we're going to use another header function here, and this is not going to be an HTTP status this time. This is going to be, first of all we're going to do the content type. So the content type, we know it's going to be an image, PNG image. Another header we want is something called a content disposition. My typing today is beautiful. Okay, content disposition, I'm going to set that to attachment. Now what this does is it basically forces the browser to download the file. We can also suggest a file name, so if we say file name equals, let's say canvas output .ping. Actually I think that's supposed to be in quotes, so I'm going to use double quotes out here and single quotes in there. So now we've got the file. Told PHP it's an image. Told PHP it's an attachment. All that's left now is to spit out the file. So all we need to do this is say read file, and we're going to just read the file that we get sent. And that's it for that. So now we just need to make a request to this page with this file path encoded in the URL. So we're going to say window.open, we're going to go to download.php, we're going to use this question mark and then file equals, and then add the response, which is the path to the file. So with any luck, that should, if we make a little masterpiece, that should, that's not working, let's see why. Let's go back to download. I haven't put a semicolon. Sure, most of you spotted that. Okay, so now if we press save, there we go. So it's downloaded that for us. And it looks like actually this wasn't supposed to have the quotes around it, because now we can see this looks really stupid. So if we close that, go back to our thing here, file name equals canvas output .ping, then go back, press save, there we go. So now we have our canvas output .ping being downloaded. We do still have this window open, that blank window that we opened to download the file. I'll leave it to you to figure out how to close that. So now you've seen a few possibilities for saving files from the canvas, and even some things that can be useful with any type of file. Next time we'll be going over what we've achieved with this application and thinking about what more we can do with it.